Good morning and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this month's edition of Carpe Datum Prescriptions. My name is Shirish Netke from Ambaroon, and I have with me our guest today, Pradeep Anant Padmanabhan, who is the CTO of Vivaki. Pradeep, welcome to our program for this one.
Thanks, Shirish. Super excited to be in this and nice to meet everybody virtually on the call.
Well, great to have you on as well. Now, guys, over the last few months, we've been doing a couple of different topics on Carpet Datum RX. Our topic for this week is about marketing in the era of big data. So that's what I guess we've been talking about for a while. Everybody's been talking about marketing. We've been talking about big data. We wanted to use this opportunity that we have with Pradeep to talk more about how big data is changing the way marketing is practiced nowadays. Now, Pradeep works for a company called Vivaki, as I mentioned earlier, which is a part of Publicis, which is one of the largest advertising and marketing companies in the world. Pradeep, can you tell us a little bit more about Vivaki and Publicis and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. So Publicis is the world's, I believe, third largest holding company, headquartered in Paris. We own advertising agency brands like Saatchi and Saatchi, Leo Burnett, Razorfish, Starcom Megaris Group, and such. We made about $7.7 billion in revenue last year, and we are spread all over the world, increasingly becoming digital and obviously when I say digital advertising, big data, and leveraging that for improving ROI on media spend is definitely big on our agenda these days.
Great, great. So you're right in the middle of marketing as it applies, and the application of big data as it applies to marketing. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, as you know, like big data is something that transcends several industries, and marketing is one of the initial industries that has probably adopted big data technologies much faster than a lot of other industries, I would say, and to good effect as well at this point.
Great. So, Pradeep, from when talking to our Carpe Datum Prescriptum subscribers, the three things which we wanted to cover as a part of this, and you can sort of comment on them. One of them was how marketers will leverage big data to create what are called rich segments. The second is about how we can be targeting customers who are most likely to buy, again from a marketing point of view. And the third is driving ROI from investments in big data and digital marketing. So these are kind of three very broad topics. Anything you'd like to comment on this before we sort of get into the specific questions we have from our subscribers?
Sure. I think the interesting thing, if you notice about the things that you have on the agenda here, whether it be creating rich segments or targeting customers who are most likely to buy, uh, these are things that marketing has, as a discipline, has purported to do right from the beginning. And especially with regard to data-driven marketing, ever since the database was invented 30, 40 years ago, these are the same things that marketing has tried to do. And I think during the course of this conversation, I'm looking forward to explore with you and sort of like, illuminate our audiences and in the process also further my understanding around how the new landscape of big data technologies is fundamentally changing these basics, because I think at the end of the day, marketing is going to fundamentally remain unchanged. It's more around how you go about doing marketing, the functions and the focus of marketing is not going to change.
So what you're saying, the objectives of marketing are going to remain the same, but the what is not going to change, but the how is going to be changing.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's great. So let's. So what we did is we asked our subscribers for a bunch of questions they would have regarding marketing, and I'm going to be going through these questions as we go along and see if what your views are on this. So here, let me ask. Let's just begin with what we've got so far. So one of the questions is like, is the real value for big data for the marketer? Is there real value for big data for the marketer, or is it the flavor of the month or flavor of the week? Is this real or is this like a passing fad? That's kind of I guess the way to interpret that question.
Yeah, I think that's a great question to start off with. At the end of the day, as I mentioned earlier, the data-driven marketing idea has been around for quite a while at this point, and so there has been changes that have been happening in the technology space, whether it be faster processors, cheaper memory, or cloud computing, or any of these things. Now, from a marketer standpoint, there is a possibility to think that, okay, Now I've got all these big data technologies, or basically I've got all these advancements in computing in general. And previously I used to have access to this thing called database technology, RDBMS software essentially. And I used to be loading customer data in huge volumes in it. And now I guess big data basically means now I'm able to do things faster and load more data and bring things up faster. While that is true to a certain extent, the idea behind big data is like, if you're basic, but if you're limiting yourselves to looking at big data as just an extension of data driven marketing that you've done all along, just that you're now using databases that are more powerful, then you're sort of missing the boat here, because I think like there is a reason why big data is hot. There is a reason why Time chose big data as the person of the year, as he mentioned.
Well, they expect you to choose it. Somebody's projecting that to be the person of the year for 2013.
So the reason for that is because, I mean, if we were to just limit ourselves to the standard improvements in computing technologies and the standard advancements that have happened in the database technology, that would not be reason to celebrate big data as what it is today. I think big data is because there is a fundamentally new set of technologies that have emerged for harnessing the power of data that are very different from traditional database technology. And these include everything from Hadoop and MapReduce algorithm that was pioneered by Google, to some of the more recent analytical databases, whether it be an Astrodata or whether it be or a Cognitio or a Vertica or any of these tools and technologies. So, or it could be like technical paradigms like the NoSQL movement and things like that. And so what this completely new class of data management technologies has done is they have completely broken the ceiling as far as what kinds of data that you could manage or handle for your marketing purposes. And this difference can be looked at along 3 dimensions. And these 3 dimensions have sort of become the standard ways of defining big data. And these are along the dimensions of volume, velocity, and variety. So basically what we are saying is that now there is a new class of technologies that will help you deal with volumes of data that you could not have dealt with using traditional database technology.
Okay.
You're also saying that now you have a new class of technologies that allow you to deal with data flowing at a torrential rate that you could probably not have harnessed previously, at least not harnessed to the point where you're able to unlock the value out of it by processing it as close to real time as possible. And thirdly, when you think about variety, there is just all this unstructured data. Like when I say unstructured, it's like data that doesn't fall into clean rows and columns that you could fit into a database, but nevertheless contains very useful information that could be drawn for marketing purposes. Now, without database technology, how do you make sense of that data? And there have been different kinds of technologies for solving these problems, but now we are at a point where technically we now have like more mature, elegant ways of solving these problems, and that's fundamentally the difference. So if you are thinking of it just as flavor of the month, then definitely missing the boat. And I think a lot of marketers out there today have gotten past that point, and I think everybody has come to terms with the fact that this is not just another flavor of the month, and this is just not another powerful database that I now use for doing data-driven marketing. I just need to recognize big data as a new way of looking at how I leverage data to further my marketing that has huge potential.
So are you essentially saying that there are things that we could not do before which you can do right now as marketers?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it would be helpful if I sort of help explain that in the context of a couple of examples of how we do things at Viveki. So we have data scientists across our agencies who are looking to make sense of all the data generated by the customers.
Right.
And one of the initial areas that they started doing that was in the space of digital advertising. As we started doing display ads, we are getting rich information in the form of cookie data about, okay, these are the kinds of people, anonymized cookie data that talks about these are all the sites that a person visited and these are all the things that they did, and then how the ad that was served to them relates to their pre-post purchase behavior and all that stuff. And previously we had a system that was hacked together using 35 servers and some custom bespoke C++
This is before the advent of big data.
This was before the advent of what we now have come to understand as big data technologies.
Okay.
We were already we were pushing the envelope, so to say. But we were doing that by using a system built together using bubblegum duct tape. And as digital activity grew and cookie volumes began to rise, the system obviously was bursting at its seams, and we were not able to keep up with that volume of data. And when I say we were not able to keep up, basically we were not able to process a day's worth of data for availability for the next day. It used to take us a week, and even if at all we were able to get it processed, because a lot of times, because this was all a system that was not necessarily built to scale to the volumes that we're dealing with today, it used to run out of memory, it used to crash often, and there were all these different issues that we kept coming up. So now enter big data technologies like MapReduce and Amazon's Elastic MapReduce version and the cloud. Now we are able to write this same code using a much more standard platform.
Okay.
You're able to get developers who understand this platform. You're able to write code that someone could understand, and you're able to do it on a system that could scale at a time, in some instances, up to 700, 800 servers that we run as a burst for like about a couple of hours. And this data gets crunched in a matter of like a few hours, as opposed to the few days it used to take in the past.
Now, sounds like this is more like an organized, systematic effort as opposed to a skunkworks
Absolutely.
effort, which may have been
Absolutely.
years ago.
Yeah, because I think at the end of the day, if you were to just look at point solutions like this, I think Hadoop and MapReduce are fairly mature at this point, and our solution is testament to that fact. In fact, we built this system about 4 years ago.
Okay.
And so even then, I mean, obviously we had some teething problems at the time, and I would say we were sort of firmly ensconced in this solution probably sometime last year. But nevertheless, we were confident enough to take this technology on 3-4 years ago, and then there was like this growing phase that we had to go through, and then now it's firmly embedded as part of our infrastructure at this point. So that's an example of something. And again, as cookie volumes keeps growing, we don't worry about it at this point. We don't think that we need to replace the system, at least over the next 5
That was an issue before,
right? Exactly.
That was
and it started getting slower, and it was there during a phase where digital advertising was growing at a much slower pace, and now we are at a point where it's just taking off astronomically. And so even with that kind of exponential growth, we feel confident that our system can scale, and it continues to scale on a day-to-day basis, delivering
great
results.
So that's pretty good traction that you guys have already had, because you started off early. But let's get back to like the marketer and his fundamental problem. I think marketers have always said that 50% of their advertising money is wasted. They just don't know which 50%, or 50 cents of every dollar.
Right.
Now, will big data solve that problem? In the sense, can you now say that, well, I can cut my marketing budget by half and still achieve the same result? Is that what big data can do?
Yeah, I think that's a great question as well. The first thing is, obviously big data can help you make more sense of where your dollars are flowing and what the ROI is getting you. But I think you, as a marketer, you need to step back and ask yourself, is that really the question that you want to ask at this point? Because I think marketing at some level is going to be it's a combination of art and science at the end of the day. And then the science part helps you get more visibility and precision into exactly what you're spending on and how you're spending on. And the art part is around, like, based on the data, what do you actually do? So, if you're thinking about big data as a means to basically understand where your marketing dollars are flowing and what impact they're getting, then you're not necessarily leveraging the full potential of big data. The real question you want to go after is, how do I leverage big data to get more bang for my dollar? It's not about which part of my dollar goes where and what it is accountable for, but it is more around, how do I keep squeezing the dollar to get more and more mileage out of it? As one of my clients put it in the past, you take all this data and you interrogate it until it confesses everything that it knows about the customer, right? So that's I thought that was a great way of putting it. And I think what we're really talking about here is, let's not worry about the attribution problem, because that's sort of more post-analysis. And the reality is, if you go after or if you make assumptions based on, okay, I did this analysis and I figured out that, 80 cents of my dollar went into Facebook and 20% went into Twitter, and 80 cents gave me X and 20 cents gave me Y. The thing is, Facebook keeps adding new features. Twitter keeps adding new features. The rules keep changing. They add an Instagram, and customers' tastes keep changing. There are more things competing for people's attention and such. So if you're trying to tweak your campaign based upon past results, then it gets only so far. Because I think at the end of the day, this is where again customers don't even know what they're looking for. Like one of the things about big data is like you need to let your imagination run amok. And
So
really
you
think
don't know
about
what you're looking for, but you'll know it when you see it.
when you
Is that-
see it, kind of thing.
okay.
Like, and that's true. I mean, that's
Wow.
it's sort of
Yeah.
like the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle at
yeah,
play.
You can
And
measure it, you can't see it, or something like that, right?
yeah, it's more like you
Yeah.
can't like know the
Location and-
speed and the location at the same time, right? It's exactly the case with you don't necessarily know you may know the speed and location of your customer, but what does he want? Like you can't really figure those things out all at the same time. And as a personal example, I have been exposed to a lot of products through this data-driven marketing that I didn't even know that I wanted or I would be interested in.
So like your iPhone 5, you didn't know you wanted an iPhone 5 until
Well, that
this week,
I think
this last month.
I think Steve Jobs has conditioned us enough to want those kinds of devices. But I'm talking about things like certain kinds of restaurants that I've never thought about going to until I saw a Groupon ad for that stuff, or like some kind of like coupons to an archery lesson or something like that I would never have thought. But somehow data-driven marketing, those things resulted in someone projecting that ad in front of me. And it may be due to serendipity, but I think that whether it be due to serendipity or whether it was a targeted thing, it clearly shows that you could target me for something like that, and you have a potential customer in me. So if you were able to take 100 things about me, and somehow you're able to figure out that when I was a child or when I was young, I used to be interested in like mythological stories that involved bows and arrows.
So you have
and you're
archery
able
for
to
you.
connect that to say, okay, maybe this guy should be interested in archery. But those are the kinds of, interesting insights about customers that you could go after.
So these are the hidden patterns you could get out of data. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
So here, let me ask you another question. I mean, while the big data story is kind of evolving, and it has, I mean, we've been talking about this now for about a few years. What's so different about 2013? And you mentioned earlier, like Forrester is saying that 2013 Time Magazine may make big data the person of the year come December 2013. But why is 2013 so different from all the other years so far?
I think the first and foremost reason for that is that there is now an ecosystem of companies that have spawned to provide more enterprise class offerings in the big data space. So Hadoop is obviously one of the big mainstays there, and then there are NoSQL databases as well. So if you look at the Hadoop ecosystem, and like it is very difficult for enterprises to go in and try something like an open source piece of software and get really burned by that stuff. And they just don't have the time or the budget to do those kinds of things. But now we are in 2013, and over the last couple of years alone, we've had like a slew of companies around the Hadoop MapReduce ecosystem that have come up to provide enterprise class offerings. Like they have versions of Hadoop that are enterprise class and that come with support and professional services and all that stuff. Sort of the cat and feeding that the enterprises need for to be able to confidently adopt these technologies. So that's one aspect of it. And even if you look at things like NoSQL, like MongoDB has done a great job in sort of coming out with big data databases that and supplemented it with like a lot of support, conferences, user groups, all that stuff. And there is like a significant amount of developer community as well that is now available for these things.
So this wasn't there until the last few years ago. Is that what?
Well, I think it all reached a critical mass probably.
You need a critical mass for it to make a difference in the commercial world. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we are at a point where we have hit that critical mass at this point, and so that's helping fuel the adoption of these technologies at a much faster pace. And then the second aspect is the cloud is also, in my mind, at some level, the cloud and big data are sort of inseparable. The growth of the cloud and especially the elastic aspects of the cloud have allowed a lot of people to embark on these big data journeys without having to worry about making huge capital
So
investments.
was that a problem before, not knowing how what capacity?
Yeah.
And you guys have been doing it for 10 years, so
Yeah,
you
I
probably
mean,
know what the
so yeah,
problem
when
is.
we were in a physical data center, we were stuck with 35 servers.
Okay.
And then, well, we had an initial problem that the software would scale beyond that. But even if we say that the software were to scale, the purchase cycles of going and procuring hardware and bringing it in, and I only need like 1,000 servers for a burst of 2 hours. Like, I'm not going to be able to justify to my CFO buying 1,000 servers to do that kind of crunching. And forget justifying it to the CFO. Like, it's like economically, it would make sense for us to be offering that kind of service to our clients if that's the kind of investment it needed. So I think, like, in the last year, and in cloud, as much as it has been around for the last few years, I think we are at a point where enough of the Fortune 500 have adopted it for enough reasons, and there is enough security stuff and enough best practices that have emerged, and Amazons have created enough best practices, and so those kinds of things have brought in a certain level of confidence amongst enterprises in terms of embracing the cloud. And so between the cloud reaching a point where it's gained enough confidence with the business and a robust ecosystem of commercial vendors spawning around big data technologies, I think we are at a point where big data is ready to take off into the mainstream, much bigger way.
So there's a report in IDC which a few months ago which said that less than 5% of relevant data is actually collected, and probably even a smaller percentage of that, a percentage is actually analyzed. So does that mean that we are really not taking advantage of all the data that we have right now, or we are not equipped to do it? What's the story here? What do you
No doubt
take
about
away from
the
this?
fact that we are leveraging a fraction of the data that's at our disposal right now, and there are multiple reasons for that. I think one of the reasons is that the data is coming in at such a furious pace, and there is this statistic about 90 or 95% of the data being the digital data out there being created in the last couple of years alone. So that's an insane amount of data that's coming in at a furious pace. And then marketers obviously are not, like, these organizations, these marketing organizations are simply not equipped to handle that volume of data. So previously, if you had to take a certain amount of data sets and start making sense out of it, you had like 5, 6, 7-person teams. Now your data volumes have increased 10-fold, 50-fold. Like you can't have the same team and try to make sense of all those data sources and incorporate them in new ways. Similarly, luckily on the technology front, you have cloud and you can use that to start scaling and all that stuff. But you're still constrained on the people front. So that could be possibly, I would guess, that's one of the reasons why we're not necessarily making use of all the data that's out there. The second reason is that a lot of this data is coming in, is so voluminous, coming in at such a velocity, and is so all over in terms of structure, that they have traditionally not hit the radar of marketers in terms of data that is even feasible to be used for exploiting for marketing purposes. So I think there is an opportunity here. Like, once there is more education and there's more knowledge of what these big data tools are capable of doing, what people never thought, like this 95% that you're talking about that is remaining unused at this point, are probably data sets that fall under this definition of things that people thought were not feasible to be exploited. And once people get exposed to the fact that, hey, today you now have technology to actually start making sense of it, and here is how you could go about thinking about this, then I think that's going to make a difference. And then there is also this tendency that I see that if you're casting or framing the problem, such as, okay, I have this huge sea of data, and I need to figure out the specific data sets that I need to look at to answer my specific questions, then you kind of ignore the rest of the data, and you seem, and I don't know, well, that's just a general pattern of thinking that I have observed in the marketplace, and that may be because of inertia, that may be because people are just used to answer a certain set of questions. I need this data to answer those questions, and I just need to keep doing that stuff. Instead of thinking that all the data that's out there and brushing it off as just noise that is not necessarily relevant to what I'm doing, I think marketers need to open up their minds and basically, really, if you look at it, the truth is every piece of data that's out there is really telling something about the customer world.
So everything is relevant.
Everything has got to be relevant at some level.
Different degrees of relevancy.
Well, it is different degrees of relevancy in different contexts.
Oh yeah.
What may be super relevant in one context may not be completely irrelevant in another context. However, if you can frame, so the question is, now that you have this data, you want to step back and really think about, am I asking the right question? If this is my question, then I agree these are not the this is not the data sets that are relevant to me.
Yeah.
But maybe I am missing an opportunity to ask certain questions that I could hitherto not have been able to answer. And now I have the capability to answer, and answering those unlocks a huge amount of potential. The way I look at it is each data set or each piece of data about a customer is like a pixel that adds to the resolution of the customer picture. And if you keep adding these individual pieces of data in, I think you're going to get a clearer and clearer picture of the customer that you could leverage. Now, the just because you could do it, you have a certain picture with like a 2 megapixel picture of the customer, whereas now you go to like 5 megapixel, 6 megapixel, you're still seeing the same face. It's still the same pattern,
but the texture is different.
But the texture is different. And what do you do with that information? It's entirely up to the marketer.
Okay.
With that information.
So it's more a matter of the context and how that is used rather than the volume of data.
Exactly. If your question is like, how does this customer's face look? You'll be able to answer that with a 2 megapixel picture. But if there are more specific questions around like, what is the lightness color of the skin, and you want to get certain information or aspects about that stuff, or what lighting they are in, and based on that you want to market something, then a higher resolution picture is going to give you that kind of information.
Okay, so let's go to a couple of questions from the Carpet Data subscribers here. I mean, one of the questions that has come up is, will big data make any marketing functions obsolete? And what would you advise people who are going to lose their jobs, whose functions are becoming obsolete? So, like a very practical question from a marketer.
So, from first-hand experience, I can tell you that no marketing functions are getting obsolete because of big data. Because, as I said, marketing as a function is not fundamentally changing because of big data. What is changing, that within each and every function, and I would go to the extent of saying there is absolutely no exceptions here, that every function within marketing is going to be impacted by big data in a certain way, in that you need to understand how big data pertains to what specifically you are doing. So if you're a media planner, big data means something to you. If you're a media buyer, big data means something to you. If you're a strategist, the big data means something else to you. So it's more about, you need to really think about what is big data, what are the possibilities it opens up for me, what are the new technologies that are available for me to do that. And that's a big learning curve. I wouldn't make the mistake of underestimating the amount of knowledge and learning curve that you have to go through, because it is a completely different ball game. And so if I were a marketer, I would basically say that I would want to basically immerse myself in all the new tools and technologies, and it's not just tools and technology, but it's new ways of doing things. Like your processes are going to change, the way you are approaching a problem is going to change. So I would just basically start looking at adapting myself to all these things as and factor in big data into the equation.
I think you mentioned that earlier when you said that what you need to achieve is not going to change, but
right.
How you achieve it and the methodologies that the technologies use, that may be different. So it's
absolutely
advisable for marketers
big
to
data
learn
is
that.
Still only one of the things that you use to make sure to further your marketing goals, right? Like you still are doing behavioral analysis, you still are doing other kinds of customer studies and things like that are all table stakes when it comes to solving the marketing problem. And those things are also going to get changed in certain ways, but they're all going to be augmented by big data at some level underlying.
That's great. So I think we're coming to the end of our session here. I mean, one of the questions which I'd like to ask is, I mean, we always have a question at the end is, what is your carpe diem prescription for our listeners? I mean, what advice would you give to marketers to take advantage of big data for the future?
Yeah, I think the key is, one of the things that I have observed in the marketing space is that the approach to technology and software systems is not necessarily as rigorous as that in, say, the financial services industry. The reason for that is, as much as data-driven marketing has been around for a long time, it has not necessarily been used in ways that it's currently being used today, where it's gotten a lot more prominence, a lot more budgets are flowing through this data-driven marketing pipeline. Then it takes a completely different significance, completely different level of significance at that point. And I would, if I were in the marketing community, I would basically take a leaf out of the financial service industry, where there are like millions of billions of dollars flowing through their systems.
And they have processes and all defined on
The
that.
investment that goes into the technology systems, the people process technology ecosystem that goes around those systems, the rigor, the testing, everything that goes into that is like in a completely different league, more in line with very mature software development processes and systems. Whereas in the data-driven marketing world, I think we need to start seeing more of that rigor. And I would argue that before you even get to the big data problem, I think people need to start solving their small data problem. Like if you're really honest with yourselves, you need to ask yourselves, have I really solved my small data problem? And this, you could look at it as like BI 101, right?
Yeah.
Like, are you getting quality data? Are you getting quality data on time? Are your systems basically fast enough consistently, and are they reliable, are they fault tolerant? Those are the kind of things that marketers need to make sure that they have those in place. And I'm saying this because as things get more significant, the price you will pay for not having all these things is going to keep increasing over a period of time.
So this is the time to make those.
This is the time.
Baseline decisions, or those fundamental decisions on the foundational.
Right, absolutely. So you want to basically build a strong foundation. And for example, like if you're using database technology, like you got to ask yourself, like, is this the right technology that is going to scale up to the kinds of data needs that I'm going to have like 2 years from now, 3 years from now? Because the problem is going to get far worse, and you don't want to be boxed to a corner before you start reacting and start putting these things in place.
So what you're also implying is that those who do this foundation level work well,
right,
are the ones who are going to succeed. Those who build big foundations,
yes,
may not be around.
Their problems are just absolutely. I completely believe that. Right. Yeah.
So that's all the time we have for right now, Pradeep. It's been great to have you here, and thank you for joining us and speaking to our Carpe Datum RX subscribers for the last half hour or so. Is there anything else you'd like to add, just to for our viewers or for our listeners, on what we should do, or what one thing they should take away from this discussion?
I don't know if there is one thing to take away from this. I hope that like I've talked about different things. I think different things are relevant for different people on where they are in their life cycle. So no, I think the key with big data again is that don't simplify the problem, or you're not doing any favor by thinking that you like don't get just because the term big data is vague, don't allow that to let you wallow in that vagueness.
Yeah.
Quickly try to understand what exactly is big data, how do I make use of it, be very specific about it, and then start carving a very specific strategy for leveraging it.
Great. Thank you very much, Pradeep.
Thanks, Shirish. Appreciate the opportunity.
Great. Thank you again for being with Carpe Datum. For all of you listening, this was the January edition of Carpe Datum Prescription, and our guest today was Pradeep Ananthapadmanabhan, CTO of Vivaki. Thank you very much.